What they're saying essentially with these studies is that guys like me, guys like you, guys who are in the male self-improvement communities are radicalizing these incels to go become the next, by the way, we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Elliot Rodger and all of like the handful of these guys who've actually taken it to the levels of actual violence.
I agree. The tweet that you had about Alex Datesike and the DHS?
Yeah, let me...
'Cause I'm going to ask you the questions that William Costello asked me.
Let me call you up.
This is going to be a little out of context for you guys, but there was a study done recently on incels by a researcher at the University of Texas at Austin, Hook'em Horns, William Costello. His thesis advisor is Dr. David Buss, who's one of the people who I quote probably more than anyone else. William and Rollo had a little tiff online, and so we're going to discuss that real quick.
It's not even so much a tiff. He just simply asked questions that he just simply didn't want to answer.
I'm going to ask, first off, real quick, can you pull up on the screen real quick?
I said Alex is a DNC shill. PACs like Progressive Victory started buying influencers last year, which they did. It's why Not So Erudite ran interference for Alex when Bex pressed him on the funding that Alex Costello's shoddy incel research last May.
Okay.
That's the one you wanted. Okay.
Now, first question from Alex. He sent me that tweet, and then he asked the question. Ask him to clearly state what his issue is with the study and what exactly he claims about our funding. Exactly.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so here's the first thing is getting into the study itself. First of all, it's only done with, according to their study, is only done on incels.co. That's the forum that they went to. Okay, that has a user base of right around 4,100 or 4,600 people. Okay, so that is not a representative sample of like the large, by and large. There's probably other people who self-identify as incels. The other thing is that incels.co, where they went to, that right there was where the DNC and where there has been counterterrorism, let's say, plants in that forum. Okay, so they're going to a forum that is already a closed system. It's already guys who already identify as incels. On top of that, they had to pay these guys $25 so they would participate in the thing to begin with. Now, I understand that other experiments and other research, it's not uncommon for them to pay participants.
That's what I was going to say.
But they pay them live at the college, at the university that they're doing it. It's not an online thing where they say, okay, give us your personal information so that we can pay you this $25 in the first place. So the innovation of paying somebody to participate in a research study like this online is something that's very, very new. It's very, very questionable to begin with.
They didn't hide it that they were doing that.
No, they did. But here's the thing. Where did the money come from so that they could pay that? So that was one question that he wasn't willing to answer.
So he answered that for me. So before we get to that real quick, was there anything about the results of the study that you had a problem with?
I had a problem with the methodology.
Okay, so there was nothing in the results.
The results seemed like they didn't have a clear idea of what they were testing for. The academic rigor that went into this was not. I don't know if you know anything about academic rigor, but what it is like they have to decide whether or not the study is formed and created to test for what they are trying to find in the first place. That was very unclear, first of all, and then second of all, it doesn't pass the rigor test in the sense that it's a snowball sampling. That's number two. That's a very shoddy way of. I would have to get into a very long conversation about research method. It was called snowball sampling. Okay. So my main problem with that study is like the results. To me, I don't even care about the results because
I didn't see anything in the results that I was like, oh, this is way off board.
It's what you're expecting, but the problem is that the results of that what's now settled science, or they want to.
I don't think anything with 4,100 people they would consider to be settled science.
No, it's
one
not.
Of several different experiments.
When Forbes magazine is quoting it, and when Tim Pool is quoting it, and when Chris Williamson is quoting it, and they're putting it out there as if it's settled science, it's settled science to everybody that's on Twitter. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing is this: is as a result of those results and of the findings in there, that is what the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, has used to determine that incels are a terrorist organization. That's a big problem that I have with it.
Second thing, he's hinted at suggesting it's DHS funded or something. Is his claim our research is rigged to make incels look good or bad? You just said no. Our funding is disclosed in our paper at any time we've had.
Exactly, and that paper has been changed twice already.
Okay, but do you have an issue specifically?
So if you want to look where the funding comes from, it's swansea.com, SWANSEA.com. So I already know exactly where it's coming from.
Is his suggestion, I'm involved with this diverging hate group group that BX is banging on about literally zero involvement there. That's what he's saying.
I don't know exactly what he's trying to.
Diverging Hate was, there was some group called Diverging Hate.
Diverting Hate.
Diverting Hate.
So Diverting Hate is the NGO that is part of the McCain Institute that is right out of ASU. Okay. Which is directly funded by the Department of Homeland Security. The first time I became aware of this was when I was on the Dr. Phil show and I was going up against Imran Ahmed. He's like the director of another NGO that does something very similar to what they're doing. They wanted to claim the scalp of Andrew Tate back in August of 2022. What they are is they're a non-governmental organization that is paid by either the UK government or the United States government, depending on which one it is. And what happens is they can bypass laws by funding these NGOs to do what the DHS would rather be doing, but they can't because of laws. So what happens is you get, I think his organization was the Center for Controlling or Combating Online Hate. I think that's what it was. That was the first time I became aware of this because he was trying to throw it at me, because I was supposed to be like the mentor or something of Andrew Tate during the Dr. Phil show. You think you already remember that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm looking at this, and what happens is these guys have to go and they have to do make work. They have to prove that they're actually doing something. The Divert Hate group that Bex and I've been sort of banging the gong, and Aaron Clary have been banging the gong about right now, is that guy, or the Diverting Hate organization is deliberately and openly diverting our traffic, your traffic, this show's traffic, Aaron Clary's traffic to approved masculinity sites because they have already determined that we are sexist, misogynist, and everything else that goes along with that.
Two different things. Your issue with the study on incels, one is that you think that the pool was too narrow. You don't specifically have an issue with the findings of the study, but
my issue with the findings of the study is that they are being used as settled science for Forbes magazine and for the DHS to designate incels as a terrorist, homegrown terrorist organization.
But William Costello did not designate incels as a terrorist organization.
But here's the other thing: is
people are using his paper.
Here's my counter question to that. If that's the case, then why is his associate, Dr. I think it's Andrew Thomas, doing exactly the same incel research in December of the same year? Why is that? What did they not find in the first one in May that they would find in December?
We'll see.
Also, within 8 months of each other, and it's the exact same one, and they're also paying the same, using the same database, using the same form, paying them $750 now. I guess inflation, right? So they're now paying them $750 to participate in this. You heard once I started banging the gong about that, you don't hear anything else about that. In fact, probably nobody who's watching the show has heard anything. about this.
So and then the other part that I think maybe the context that William doesn't have is the idea that you've been put on a DHS watch list.
And I'm not the only one.
Yes, because of the content that you've been making.
The part that gets even darker about this is then you've got Alex from DatePsych, and then you've got Chris Williamson. Chris Williamson, essentially being affiliate marketers for this, trying to recruit, and not so erudite, by the way, who is involved with Progress Victory and is involved with the DNC politicalization of this. So you've got them in their tweets during May of last year recruiting, basically putting the word out there because they got such a low response rate that they need Chris Williamson, who, by the way, broadcasted this as settled science once it came out. And then you've got Alex from DatePsych, who is doing exactly the same thing. In fact, their tweets are so similar, they could have been copied and pasted.
So let me say one thing. If they're watching an idea, but might not to be called it an incel study, because incel literally means involuntarily celibate, but the word itself, the short version of the word, has become a pejorative. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, so how do you get away from that when the only form you're sampling from is called incel.co?
Right. So that's the issue. Like, for instance, there was a point where I did 2 deployments into the Middle East, and I came home for a couple of weeks, and during that entire period, I had no sex with women because I was deployed in the Middle East. Okay. And during that point, I was involuntarily celibate, but would have never considered myself an incel. Do you see what I'm saying? This is a suggestion for like Chris Williamson, DatePsych, William Costello.
I have another suggestion for them as well. Here's the thing: is if you're going to, why on earth would this, especially now, I'm also questioning the timing here. Why on earth would this be so important during an election cycle as well? So, and the reason I'm saying that is because of Divert Hate and because of the the politicalization of influencers such as Destiny, such as Jasmine Jafar, such as Farah, such as the people that you interviewed today. Is what they're saying their own words, or are they putting the words in their mouths because they're paying those influencers to propagandize the Democratic
to be devil's advocate? William Costello does not get to choose when he becomes a PhD. So like he's got to have a PhD thesis at some point during. So the fact that it is now, I don't know if that necessarily corresponds with the upcoming election. But I do where I do agree with you. I don't think William Costello is saying that or his study is saying that incels are terrorists. I do think that people who already had the notion that incels were terrorists used this study in order to back up what they're believing.
So here's the greater problem, is that what they're saying essentially with these studies is that guys like me, guys like you, guys who are in the male self-improvement communities are radicalizing these incels to go become the next, by the way, we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of Elliot Rodger and all of like the handful of these guys who've actually taken it to the levels of actual violence.
I agree with you that diverting hate does that. I don't think that William Costello does that. That's the difference.
If he isn't, he's doing it inadvertently for people who want to use it so that they can say that it's these red pill sons of bitches who are going out there and radicalizing these guys so they'll go out and kill women. That's essentially what it's coming down to.
Okay. All right. Got it. Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. Hopefully at some point during the summer we can have William come out here.
Anytime.
For sure.
Anytime.